The hour between dog and wolf, that transforming moment when humans both hope and fear that a dog will become a wolf. When opening this book, the reader is plunged into a world where the line between reason and instinct, between human and beast, blurs. John Coates' The Hour Between Dog and Wolf is not merely a study of financial markets, but an anatomical journey into human biology when facing risk. Here, every heartbeat, every surge of excitement or exhaustion leaves its mark on the price charts. Why can a fleeting victory transform a person into a defiant, arrogant tyrant? Why does a string of losses scar us so deeply, like an unhealing wound, warping both our minds and bodies? And more importantly, can we train ourselves not to be swept away by these biological tides, or are we forever puppets of our own nervous systems? Now, let's begin summarizing this book with me. Part 1: Mind and Body in Financial Markets. When you expose yourself to risk, your body immediately reminds you that it exists, that it can be harmed. A driver speeding into a sharp curve, a surfer facing a wall of water crashing onto coral, a mountaineer clinging to rock as a blizzard approaches, or a soldier running across an open field under enemy fire. All of them know the risk of death hanging over their heads. This very possibility awakens every instinct, triggering the fight-or-flight response. What's astonishing is that even when death isn't imminent, simply engaging in a game or a match can shake the body. This feeling is familiar to anyone who has ever competed in sports or stood in the stands. Risk always consumes both body and mind. Troku, who endured devastating wars, recognized this power of non-lethal risks. He recounted a polo match in India. The tense faces of the soldiers looked as if it weren't a game, but a matter of life and death. It was there, he said, that the most intense emotions erupted, sometimes even more powerfully than on the battlefield. The same applies to finance. A trader, a fund manager, or an individual sitting in front of a screen at home, none of them face death directly. But the bets they place can sweep away careers, homes, marriages, reputations, even social standing. Money here isn't merely a number. It's a distilled symbol from millennia of evolution, where humanity confronts reward and punishment. Therefore, gaining or losing has the power to awaken our most primal biological responses. Unlike immediate danger, financial risk carries long-lasting consequences. A successful or failed trade doesn't conclude in minutes or hours, but can leave aftershocks for months, even years. Our nervous and endocrine systems were not designed for such prolonged fluctuations. When we win big, we inflate with exhilaration to the point of recklessness and arrogance, as if transforming into someone else. When we lose, fear gnaws at us hourly. Stress hormones don't dissipate but linger, leading to pathological risk avoidance, even depression. The body becomes prone to illness, high blood pressure, abdominal obesity, stomach ulcers. Therefore, financial risk is also a biological activity with medical consequences no less brutal than facing a wild beast. This might sound alien to ears accustomed to economic dogma. Economics often assumes that evaluating financial risk is a purely rational problem of probabilities, rates of return, and optimal capital allocation. But behind that cold theoretical veneer, biology is stirring. Our bodies prepare for risk as they would for battle. Heart rate increases, breathing adjusts, blood redistributes, hormones release. These electrical currents and chemicals don't just react, they feed back, influencing the brain and altering how we think. In an ideal state, this combination creates keen intuition and lightning-fast reactions. But sometimes, a flood of hormones can sweep away reason, pushing traders into irrational euphoria or extreme pessimism, shaking the entire market and spreading into the economy. Imagine stepping onto the trading floor. The air is taut. A place where one successful year can catapult you into the elite, but one failed year can cast you into the abyss. The numbers dancing on the screens aren't just prices, they are a storm of hormones rushing through your veins. Unexpected news from the Fed can make a silent floor erupt. Eyes scan, heart rates change, breaths quicken. The body recognizes the event even before consciousness does. At the center of this response is the locus coeruleus, a cluster of blue cells in the brainstem. It detects even subtle changes in market patterns, putting the entire nervous system on high alert. When stability shatters, the locus coeruleus sounds the alarm. Lower sensory thresholds so I can hear more clearly, see more sharply. For athletes, it's the moment everything slows down, every detail emerging. For traders, it's a vague but powerful signal that can shift decisions. In just minutes, rumors of the Fed raising interest rates spread, plunging the trading floor into chaos, with prices wildly fluctuating. Sellers panic and flee, reckless buyers jump in, the atmosphere feverish, like a festival where fortunes and misfortunes are decided in an instant. And while their hands type orders, their bodies have already prepared. Heart rates increase, breathing quickens, blood diverts from the stomach to muscles and brain. The immune system stands guard. Testosterone escalates, adrenaline surges, subtly activating dopamine. All coalesce into a chemical symphony. In this state, traders are no longer themselves. They enter the moment the medievals called the hour between dog and wolf, a fragile boundary when humans can transform, becoming someone entirely different. The trading floor is nothing short of a battlefield for risk-takers. A peaceful morning can quickly turn into a storm. Just one unexpected headline appears, and traders sit before their screens, eyes glued to price columns, but their bodies are already one step ahead of their minds. Subtle changes in market rhythms are felt through muscle tension, rapid breathing, and small tremors in the chest. When rumors of the Federal Reserve raising interest rates spread, everything explodes. Bond prices fall, stocks tumble, trading volumes surge. But it's not just a disruption of numbers, it's a transformation of people. Testosterone surges, turning traders into supremely confident individuals, ready to take on increasingly larger bets. This hormone increases hemoglobin, boosting oxygen transport, making muscles and brain work like supercharged engines. But with it, the craving for risk also ignites. Adrenaline provides urgent fuel by pumping glucose from the liver and into the blood during peak hours. Meanwhile, cortisol, often known as the stress hormone, drips into the brain, activating dopamine, pushing traders into a state of euphoria. Stress at low doses becomes a game, an addictive thrill. This very blend makes them believe no other profession in the world can compare. At 2:14 p.m., the trading floor falls into an eerie silence. Everyone has placed their bets, preparing to face the announcement. Hearts beat slower, breaths deepen, muscles are taut like bowstrings. They are not just intellectually prepared, their bodies are also ready for the fateful moment. The entire biological mechanism is directed toward this instant, where body and mind merge into one. From my perspective, the stories of traders like Scott, Logan, Martin, or Gren are not just sequences of successful or failed trades, they are journeys of the body and brain, intertwined in cycles of euphoria and collapse. In these cycles, people change, sometimes to the point of becoming unrecognizable to themselves. But the tragedy lies in this. Victory leads to complacency, and complacency leads to collapse. It's an age-old cycle, what the ancient Greeks called hubris and nemesis. Traders who win big feel invincible, and that very arrogance plunges them into a mire of losses. Their bodies are not exempt. Hormones fuel excessive confidence, turning erroneous decisions into disasters. Alan Greenspan was once astonished by the recurrence of these cycles. He described them as innate responses that cause humans to swing between euphoria and fear, generation after generation, not just in finance, but in sports, politics, and war. Wherever humans hold power and believe themselves exempt from rules, extraordinary success almost always leads to excess. The question is, why? Neuroscience and physiology today offer an explanation. Our biology is programmed to fall into this spiral. Floods of hormones not only enhance short-term capabilities, but also sow the seeds of long-term delusion. When a trader wins repeatedly, testosterone accumulates, belief surges, and they become blind. When they lose, cortisol can dominate, fear spreads, causing them to avoid risk to an extreme degree. Biology creates seasons of the market, just like the 4 seasons in nature. There's a spring of excitement, a summer of prosperity, an autumn of tension, and a winter of collapse. Humans cannot stand outside of this because their own bodies write the script. What's fascinating is that science can illuminate every step in this play, understanding the hormonal mechanisms. We see clearly why a trader becomes as arrogant as a lord of the universe when the market booms, and also why they crumble when the cycle reverses. These moments of realization, what Aristotle called anagnorisis, help us understand ourselves. Why does the heart race when facing risk? Why can stress destroy the body? Why does excessive euphoria lead to self-destruction? Biology doesn't just explain financial phenomena, it's a mirror reflecting human nature. And when we look through that mirror, we see that finance, with all its violent fluctuations, is merely an amplified version of everyday biology, playing sports, running political campaigns, entering battle. All share a common biological script. The story on the trading floor is just an overture to what I want to unveil, the profound connection between the body and financial decisions. When observing Scott and others, we clearly see two parallel threads. On one side, external behaviors they buy, sell, celebrate, despair. On the other side, internal biological rhythms, hormones surge, nerves tense, silent changes within the body. These two threads intertwine into an inseparable fabric. With each victory, confidence swells, perception and emotion distort, akin to a form of transfiguration. But just as in classical tragedies, where humans are swept away by pride, the cycle here is inevitable. The arrogance of success leads to nemesis inescapable punishment. This is not just literary imagery, it occurs in the physical body. Testosterone surges during winning streaks, leading to blind confidence. And then, when failure strikes, cortisol floods the brain, leaving psychological and biological scars. We tend to think of financial markets as merely a game of strategy, where reason and analysis play the sole role. But in reality, biological cycles are equally powerful, driving crowds again and again. Each cycle of boom and bust, seemingly unexpected, follows a familiar script: exhilaration, recklessness, collapse. Alan Greenspan once called these innate responses, causing people to swing between euphoria and fear, between confidence and panic. Robert Shiller later coined the term irrational exuberance to name that collective feeling. John Maynard Keynes long spoke of animal spirits to describe the vague but powerful drive behind investment. All these concepts, from economists to researchers, try to grasp what biological science today can directly illuminate: hormones, bodily reactions, the biologization of greed and fear. Looking back at the dot-com bubble, I remember not just the market spectacle, but also the people transformed. They slept less, drank more, sought pleasure more, and their attitudes changed. Their walk, their gaze, their way of speaking all hinted at invincibility. This was not accidental, but a direct result of biological reactions silently shaping behavior. Yet, the important point I want to emphasize is that reason cannot be separated from the body. When a trader thinks he is analyzing an investment with pure logic, his body has already gone ahead, preparing reactions, dumping hormones into the bloodstream, changing how the brain processes information. There are moments when intuition appears faster than reason because it is built from a network of accumulated experience and biological signals. Thinking with the body is not a metaphor, it is physiological reality. For me, connecting the economic story with the biological story creates special moments of insight. We suddenly understand why we feel nauseous when nervous. Blood is drawn from the stomach to muscles and brain. We understand why prolonged stress leads to cardiovascular disease, stomach ulcers, and immune system depletion. These are not metaphors, they are concrete consequences of allowing stress hormones to dominate for too long. From there, I reach a crucial point. Financial markets are not just places to trade stocks and bonds, but also where collective mental health is weighed. If athletes are overconfident, they lose a game. But if traders are swayed by hormones, the entire global financial system can falter. This forces us to view the market with different eyes. It is a giant biological experiment where hormones, minds, and society collide to tell a story I witnessed firsthand, to explain biologically what economics often overlooks. I want readers to understand that financial risk is an adventure of the body, not just a problem of reason. And to understand the market, we must understand ourselves, from cells, hormones, to emotions. We will delve into how the body creates cycles of euphoria and depression, how testosterone and cortisol drive behavior, and finally, how humans can learn to withstand that biological storm. Only then can we see the market with eyes unclouded by the body's illusions. In my memory, the 1990s on Wall Street was a special period when the dot-com bubble surged and then burst. It was not just an economic phenomenon, but a natural experiment in the biology of risk. I once sat at the trading desk watching the Nasdaq climb from under 600 points to over 5,000 in less than a decade, then collapse back to its starting level. It was like a frantic storm sweeping away all rational laws. What haunted me was not just the numbers but the transformation of people. Traders who were originally cautious and calm gradually became euphoric. They slept less, plunged into parties, their eyes gleaming, their steps full of confidence. Their bodies seemed to be pumped with a new kind of fuel. This change, I realized, could not be explained solely by greed or strategy. It bore all the hallmarks of a biological reaction. When the market boomed, participants didn't think they were deluded. On the contrary, they truly believed they were buying the future. This belief was not fake. It was deeply rooted, spreading, turning into a feeling of certainty. And when profits came repeatedly, they not only enriched pockets but also ignited euphoria and emotion that made them feel immortal. There was one particular moment I'll never forget. The traders I knew, after several weeks of consecutive wins, walked and spoke differently, as if they had transformed into another version of themselves. They didn't just believe in the market, they believed in their own invincibility. Some even compared themselves to lords of the universe. And in that state, risk was no longer calculated, it became a game. However, that confidence didn't last long, just like in all tragedies. When the peak arrived, the fall also struck. As soon as a losing streak began, cortisol flooded the nervous system, changing the brain in a completely different way. Euphoria extinguished, replaced by persistent, haunting anxiety, making people avoid risk to an extreme degree. Thus, testosterone and cortisol alternately took the lead, writing the script of exhilaration and collapse. What I realized was that these manifestations were not only seen in the market, politics also had similar cycles. David Owen, former British Foreign Secretary, described the hubris syndrome, where powerful leaders, after long periods of victory, fall into arrogance, recklessness, and lose control. He called it a personality disorder linked to power. And I saw clear parallels between those politicians and traders. Testosterone leads to a sense of omnipotence, and that very feeling pushes them into error. In the dot-com bubble, I saw a fusion of both worlds. Young people with internet and technology, granted almost unlimited funding, believed they were creating a new era. No one wanted to be called not understanding, for that was the worst insult at the time. Lavish parties, naive business plans still received funding simply because no one dared to sit out the game. To simply call it greed would be too simplistic. Within the bubble, greed transformed into euphoria, and from euphoria into the delusion of certainty. And the danger was that the body reinforced that delusion. Hormones ceaselessly pumped into the blood, making people believe they were right, that nothing could go wrong. I recall a company called Com, which promised free 1-hour delivery in Manhattan. Economically, it was a suicide formula, but in the collective intoxication, people didn't care. Investors poured money in, young people rushed around on bicycles at night, ignoring red lights. The only thing left afterward was bankruptcy. You might ask, did they have an exit strategy before everything collapsed? The answer is very rarely. Most were no longer capable of coherent thought. Conversations at the time were full of vague keywords like convergence, disruption, the future. And when you tried to argue with history or data, they brushed it aside as if it were a voice from a dead world. I realized those states were identical to a disease, mania, a manic episode. The symptoms were very clear. Little sleep, overflowing ideas, increased libido, excessive confidence, reckless bets. None of them saw themselves as ill, but their bodies and behaviors told the truth. For me, these observations were not just about finance but scientific data. Economics often overlooks the field, focusing only on models, but biological science cannot do that. To understand animals, one must go to the savannah. To understand humans, one must observe them in their most primal state. And it was on the trading floor that I saw vivid evidence of the impact of hormones on risk behavior. From my observations during the dot-com bubble, I began to wonder, is there some kind of euphoria molecule in the body responsible for exaggerating belief and reckless behavior? This idea wasn't new. Alan Greenspan once used the phrase irrational exuberance, and Keynes spoke of animal spirits, a vague but powerful force that drives people to invest despite reason. But what if it wasn't just a metaphor, but actually a biological response? In the 1990s, some scientists suggested this. Some believed that antidepressants like Prozac contributed to inflating the bubble by reducing investors' caution. Others blamed cocaine, rumored to be rampant among bankers. But in my opinion, the cause lay not in external substances, but within the human body itself. When traders experienced consecutive wins, testosterone surged, pushing them into a state of euphoria. This hormone not only increases muscle mass or stamina, but also changes the way one thinks. It makes people view the world with greater confidence, accept more risks, and sometimes become reckless to the point of losing control. A prolonged winning streak is like a natural stimulant, a self-created intoxication. At the same time, adrenaline and cortisol also play their parts. Adrenaline fuels rapid reactions, pumping fuel into the blood, transforming the body into an instant reflex machine. Cortisol, usually associated with stress, at low levels becomes a source of pleasurable stimulation. It activates dopamine, the nervous system's chemical that brings feelings of exhilaration, making traders feel the market's flow is nothing short of a drug. This is the mechanism that unifies body and mind in pivotal moments. When the Fed prepared to announce interest rates, traders didn't just analyze scenarios. They sat there, eyes wide, breathing deep, muscles tense. Their entire bodies had entered a state of impending eruption, like warriors before battle. And when the signal sounded, they plunged in with a confidence that came not just from reason, but from surging hot blood. The price paid for these cycles is not small. When testosterone is too high, traders become arrogant, disregard risk, and place increasingly larger bets. And when the winning streak ends, the fall is painful. Cortisol accumulates, not leaving the body in a day or two. It leaves scars: prolonged stress, insomnia, increased blood pressure, weakened immune system, depression. Body and finances collapse together. This is no longer a metaphor. I have seen friends, colleagues fall losing not just money but also health, marriages, honor. The market is like a cruel carousel. Whoever stays on top for too long will be thrown to the bottom, and the body is the machine that records every impact. Working with scientists at Rockefeller University, I learned about an important field of research: neurogenesis, the formation of new neurons. Experiments there showed that hormones not only affect the body, but also restructure the brain. Testosterone, estrogen, and cortisol can be found throughout the body, including the brain. They are not just regulatory messages, but creative forces that reshape how we think and act. This is a significant discovery. It turns out that each cycle of winning and losing in the market leaves not only psychological memories, but also biological imprints, altering the brain's structure and function. Prolonged success can fundamentally change a person, turning them into someone else, until failure pulls them back to the opposite state. When I understood this, I realized that thinking with the body is not a literary image but a reality. The vague sensations in the gut, the premonitions, are in fact signals from hormones, from physiological reactions integrated by the brain into decisions. Traders, athletes, warriors all live by this ability. But at the same time, this very ability makes humans prone to tragic spirals, because hormones don't know when to stop. They push us beyond our limits, then leave the body exhausted. The market, in this way, is a magnified mirror of biology itself. To understand the market, one must start with one's own body. Understanding hormones, understanding stress, understanding intuition, that is the first step to not becoming a victim of the cycles of euphoria and collapse. Because if not, we will forever live in the hour between dog and wolf, where humans transform, sometimes into indomitable predators, sometimes trembling at their own shadows. Part 2. Thinking instinctively. Humans often believe they are the rational species, that all decisions are made based on analysis and reasoning. But when I observed more closely, both on the trading floor and in everyday moments, the truth emerged quite differently. Intuition appears like lightning, preceding all explanation. Only afterward do we hastily weave a rational story. This has clear biological basis. The brain does not process information in a single straight line. It constructs two parallel pathways, two types of reactions that can run simultaneously, one slow and precise, one fast and crude. Imagine this: signals from the senses, sounds, images, smells first pass through the thalamus, a relay station in the center of the brain. From here, there are two routes. The high road sends signals up to the sensory cortex, where neurons analyze details of color, lines, and frequency. This process requires time because it needs careful decoding of each element. The result is a clear picture that allows us to precisely identify the object, accurately assess risk or opportunity. But in return, the reaction comes slowly, sometimes just a few hundred milliseconds, enough to miss a critical moment. In parallel, the low road cuts across, shooting directly from the thalamus to the amygdala. Here, the information is only a blurred draft, but enough to elicit an immediate emotion, like or dislike, safe or dangerous. This path doesn't wait for reason. It prioritizes speed so the body can spring up, twitch, dodge, or charge forward before consciousness can intervene. This very trade-off, speed versus accuracy, is the fundamental operating principle of the nervous system. Imagine a trader in front of a flickering screen. Stock prices fluctuate, new headlines appear. Before he can finish reading the text, his body tenses, heart rate changes. That's the low road issuing an alert. A few seconds later, when his brain completes the detailed analysis, he knows the exact reason: an earnings report, an interest rate policy. But the initial reaction has already proceeded, shaping his feelings, even steering his decision. This is not ambiguity. Neurological experiments have proven that the amygdala can detect danger signals in just 1/10 of a second, much faster than the cortex. Even a small delay can be the difference between life and death in an evolutionary environment, where our ancestors had to react instantly to a rustle in the bushes. Therefore, the brain maintains both pathways, accepting the trade-off. It might issue false alarms, but it will rarely miss a real danger. This leads to a paradox. Many decisions we think are based on reason are actually born from the low road, from the vague but extremely fast draft. The body jumps in first, the brain rationalizes later. And when these reactions are constantly repeated, day after day, they become the foundation for what we call professional intuition. If you've ever seen a doctor pause after a quick glance to diagnose a case, or a chess grandmaster glance over the board and choose the right move, that is precisely the manifestation of this two-path system. The combination of slow, precise processing with fast, crude processing creates extraordinary responsiveness. On the trading floor, this is evident. A furrowed brow, a small movemental contain information that the body has processed before consciousness intervenes. For me, realizing this was a turning point. It showed that the body is not just a skeleton supporting the mind, but an active part of the thought process. The undeniable truth is, we think with our whole bodies. When I began to research more deeply, the most surprising thing was that the body sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends down to the body. We usually think the brain commands and other organs obey. In reality, a constant stream of information from the heart, lungs, stomach, intestines, even from muscles, flows back to the brain, forming a symphony of biological data that consciousness rarely perceives. Consider the heart. Each time it beats, a small pressure wave spreads throughout the arteries, simultaneously activating mechanical and chemical sensors in the vessel walls. These sensors send electrical signals up to the brainstem and cortex, updating every beat about blood pressure, oxygen levels, and heart rate. These signals don't just serve to sustain life, they directly participate in shaping emotions, determining whether we feel calm or anxious, excited or stressed. Lungs are not just breathing machines. Subtle changes in respiratory rhythm, the depth of each breath, are all registered by the nervous system and transmitted to the brain. That's why techniques like slow, deep breathing can calm the mind. When breathing changes, the brain receives the message. The danger has passed, we can relax. The stomach and intestines are another world. Millions of neurons hidden in the intestinal wall form what is called the enteric nervous system. It acts almost like a second brain, capable of controlling digestion without cortical intervention. More importantly, it constantly reports on the state of internal organs: full stomach, hunger, stress. These signals not only make us aware of our body's condition, but also permeate our emotions. The churning sensation in the stomach when anxious is not a metaphor, but a real physiological message. But even more surprising is the role of muscles. For a long time, neuroscience has known about the concept of proprioception muscles, joints, and skin sending sensory information about position, movement, and force. But recent studies show that muscles can also transmit signals quickly and complexly enough to participate in the foundation of emotion. When we face a dangerous situation, muscles tense not just to prepare for action, but also to report back to the brain that the situation is serious. Emotional reactions appear almost immediately. It could be said that muscles are the first warning line. Before the eyes can clearly see, before the ears can analyze sound, muscles have already changed their tone, sending electrical signals to the brain. The brain uses this to make instant judgments, advance or retreat. This is especially important for those in high-speed environments, pilots, athletes, and traders. When the market fluctuates unexpectedly, their bodies react as if facing physical danger. Clenched fists, tense shoulders, trembling calves. All these signals combine to form a body language that they themselves often don't consciously perceive. I call this the phenomenon of muscles and the first response. It shows that emotions don't always originate in the brain and then spread to the body. Sometimes the body initiates first, the brain follows. And this explains why we can feel a situation is right or wrong in an instant. Remember a moment you almost stepped into the street against a red light. It wasn't consciousness that pulled you back, but muscles recoiling, heart pounding. Only then did the brain catch up and realize a car was speeding towards you. Intuition in finance is the same. Traders don't always know the precise reason, but their bodies have already sounded the alarm, and the decision is made in a flash. From this, we clearly see a paradox. The body, traditionally seen as subservient, is actually a co-author of thought. The streams of signals from the heart, lungs, intestines, and muscles not only keep us alive, but also shape our intuition, emotions, and decisions. They are the physical foundation of what we call gut feelings. When entering the world of finance, many carry a deeply ingrained belief. The market is efficient. No one can consistently beat it. This is the efficient market hypothesis, which argues that prices reflect all available information and all fluctuations are random. No one can use intuition to outperform the crowd. According to this logic, intuition is nothing more than delusion. Yet, the experience I witnessed proves otherwise. There have been traders who, over years, developed a kind of instant perception of the market. They didn't explain it with formulas, but could asterisk feel when a trade had a higher probability of success. Their accuracy was repeated so many times that it was hard to call it luck. I remember a colleague who could glance at the screen for a few seconds and decide whether to buy or sell. Initially, I suspected he was reckless, but after hundreds of trades, his results were exceptional, while many others, strictly following textbooks, lost money. This made me realize that perhaps intuition in finance can be trained, just like in other professions. But how do you distinguish true intuition from delusion? Here, measurement tools play a crucial role. In the trading world, we have a metric called the Sharpe ratio, which takes average returns and divides it by the volatility of those returns. In other words, it tells whether profits come from skill or merely from taking high risks. If the Sharpe ratio is stable and superior, it's a sign of true expertise. For me, the Sharpe ratio became a filter. It distinguishes those who rely on impulsive gut feelings from those who have developed professional intuition based on experience and continuous feedback. The former might win a few times by chance, but will quickly be exposed when a losing streak hits. The latter, conversely, maintains performance over time, proving that their body and brain have learned the market's patterns. Debates about the effectiveness of intuition aren't limited to finance. In psychology, there's an entire field of research on experts. Doctors diagnosing diseases with just a glance, chess grandmasters recognizing a position in a second, firefighters escaping a collapsing building thanks to an unexplainable unease. All rely on a common mechanism: pattern recognition. The human brain doesn't need to analyze every detail. It stores thousands of experiences, and when it encounters a similar situation, it matches patterns to produce a quick reaction. We call that intuition. In stable, rule-bound environments, intuition becomes a powerful tool, even more accurate than slow analysis. But is the market environment truly stable? Many economists argue it's not. They liken the market to a completely random coin toss. But my experience, and that of many in the profession, shows that markets also have repeating patterns. They are not absolute, but but sufficient for the body to learn and react. The value of intuition lies there. Of course, intuition cannot completely replace reason. A trade based on gut feeling still needs to be verified, risk-managed, and placed within a framework of discipline. But to completely deny intuition, as some economists have done, is to ignore an important part of human nature in the market. For me, intuition is not magic. It is the product of a learning process where body and brain participate together, storing experience and responding with immediate feelings. And when placed in a rule-rich environment, it becomes a sophisticated form of expertise, helping people process information at a speed that reason can never keep up with. I've often heard skeptics say that intuition is merely self-deception. They argue that humans tend to seek patterns in chaos, to the point of seeing shapes in clouds or signals from a coin toss. It's true that the brain has a tendency to hallucinate patterns, apophenia. But the existence of errors doesn't mean all intuition is worthless. The crucial factor lies in the environment where intuition is trained. Compare two cases: an emergency doctor who, after thousands of cases, learns to look at a patient for a few seconds and predict their condition. A chess grandmaster who, after thousands of games, can glance at the board and immediately choose the right move. Both environments have stable rules. Pathologies have symptoms, chessboards have immutable rules. This stability allows intuition to become a reliable pattern recognition tool. In finance, the problem is more complex. The market contains a large random element, but it is not entirely chaotic either. There are repeating patterns, typical reactions to news, cyclical crowd psychology. Traders, over the years, accumulate body memories of these patterns. This explains why some people can instantly spot opportunities, while others, lacking experience, only see chaos. But if the environment lacks rules, intuition will betray you. A classic example is random betting games. Many people believe that if a coin has landed heads 3 times in a row, the next time it will surely be tails. That's a pattern hallucination. Intuition is drawn into chaos. The market is sometimes like that, too, when overlapping information and random fluctuations make intuition a double-edged sword. I learned that intuition must be conditional. It is only reliable when the environment has repeating rules and when you have experienced it enough times for your body to learn the patterns. In a completely random environment, intuition is merely the echo of delusion. This difference also explains why some traders survive and others collapse. The former know how to choose the right environment for intuition to flourish: products, tools, markets with clear enough repeating patterns. They use both gut feeling and verify it with discipline and risk management. The latter place their faith in gut feelings in chaotic environments and are soon swept away by the market. Here, intuition is not an innate gift, but a honed expertise. It's like a tennis player's eyes seeing the trajectory of the ball or a musician's ears catching a wrong note in the orchestra. The body accumulates thousands of feedback loops, creating a pattern bank. Each time a new situation is encountered, the brain simply pulls out a similar pattern, matches it, and provides an immediate reaction. This is also why intuition can develop or degenerate. If constantly placed in a stable training environment, it becomes sharp. If neglected or misplaced, it becomes distorted, leading to errors. I noticed this when comparing colleagues. Disciplined traders who chose strategies with clear rules often maintained a stable, sharp ratio. Their intuition was like a finely tuned radar, catching real signals and ignoring noise. In contrast, those who chased chaotic markets, their intuition was like a low-quality receiver, picking up only static and believing it to be a signal. Neuroscience supports this view. Studies on experts show that reliable intuition arises only when 3 conditions converge: a rule-bound environment, clear feedback, and long-term practice. Lacking one of the 3, intuition easily becomes delusion. In finance, this is even harsher because feedback is not always clean. Profits can come from luck, not skill. Therefore, measuring with the sharp ratio or similar tools is the only way to know if your intuition is truly valuable. Intuition is pattern recognition in an orderly environment. It is not magic, nor mysticism. It is a product of the body and brain, honed through experience, and it only works when the environment allows it. If we understand this clearly, we will no longer blindly follow intuition, nor foolishly deny it. I've often wondered why gut feeling became such a popular idiom. It turns out that behind that familiar phrase is a very real biological mechanism: interoception, the ability to sense signals from our internal organs. We don't just see, hear, smell, touch. We also feel our own body's activities: heart rate, breathing, the tension or distension in our abdomen. Neuroscience has shown that people who are more sensitive to their heart rate or visceral sensations often have better intuition in decision-making tasks. This is not accidental. When the body reacts to a situation, the heart speeds up, the stomach tightens, the brain receives these signals and integrates them into its assessment. A gut feeling is the conscious translation of this integration process. In trading, I've seen it happen repeatedly. Some colleagues would say, "I felt a churn in my stomach, so I avoided that deal." At first, it might sound superstitious, but it's actually a biological signal from the enteric nervous system, with its millions of neurons sending messages to the brain that the body is reacting to risk. The trader doesn't know the precise details of asterisk why asterisk, but that feeling makes them cautious. There's an entire system called the gut-brain axis. The gut not only digests but also produces and regulates many neurochemicals like serotonin and dopamine, which determine emotions and behavior. When you're stressed, your gut contracts. When you're scared, your stomach aches. When you're excited, your gut also feels alive. All these reactions are subconscious, but they seep into decisions. I remember an experiment where participants were shown cards in a game. Some decks were advantageous, others disadvantageous. It took many cards for them to consciously figure out the rules. But after just 10 draws, their bodies had already started to sweat when they touched the disadvantageous deck. The body knew before the conscious mind knew. This is the biological basis of intuition. For me, this is both fascinating and terrifying. Fascinating because it proves that intuition is not some vague thing, but the result of visceral signals and the gut nervous system. Terrifying because the body can also be wrong, especially when the environment is unstable. A false signal from the gut can make us miss an opportunity or rush into an error. This brings me back to the market. There, intuition needs to be verified just like any other tool. A trader might trust a feeling, but he must cross-reference it with data, measure it with the Sharpe ratio or a risk management system. Otherwise, a gut feeling can easily turn into an excuse for recklessness. However, when placed in the right environment, intuition is a powerful weapon. It allows humans to make decisions in an instant when there's no time for analysis. It utilizes the entire body as a memory bank, feedbacking through the heart, lungs, muscles, and gut. In a flash, the brain integrates these signals into a judgment. This is why I believe the body is a part of intelligence. We don't think with the brain alone, but with a network extending throughout the body. When we understand this, we no longer disdain intuition, nor deify it. We see it as a form of embodied intelligence with clear strengths and limitations. For intuition to be reliable, it must be trained in the right environment. Just as athletes cannot rely on luck, traders cannot cling solely to gut feelings. But if combined with discipline, measurement, and continuous feedback, intuition becomes an ally, guiding us through moments when pure reason cannot react quickly enough. When we talk about intuition, we often imagine a flash of insight, a spark in the head. But in reality, that process is the result of thousands of signals from the body, integrated by the brain into an immediate sensation. If we dissect them, we will see hidden layers of operation. First are the signals from the cardiovascular system. When you face an uncertain situation, your heart instantly changes rhythm, sometimes faster, sometimes stronger. Receptors in the arterial walls register the pressure change, transmitting it to the brain. The brain recognizes the abnormal heart rate, associating it with the context. That's why you feel anxiety or alertness even before you understand the reason. Next are the signals from respiration. Short, rapid breaths tell the brain that the body is in an urgent state. Conversely, deep breaths send a message of safety. Many meditation techniques or breath regulation practices are actually impacting this very mechanism, giving false signals to trick the brain into believing the danger has passed. Then there's the gut, where millions of neurons work in the dark. The enteric nervous system sends both chemical and electrical signals to the brain, playing a crucial role in shaping mood. The discomfort in your stomach when you're anxious, or the feeling of lightness when you're relieved, is not a metaphor. It's an internal report that the brain receives and interprets as emotion. And what about the muscles? When you face risk, they tense up and tremble. That's a preparatory action, but also a message sent back to the brain. This situation is serious. Thanks to this signal, you might avoid an accident or stop a misguided trade in time. All these signals converge in the brain, where they are not processed separately but integrated into a single judgment. We call that intuition. It doesn't happen in language, it doesn't require reasoning, but appears as a vague yet powerful feeling right or wrong, safe or dangerous. This leads to a remarkable truth. Intuition is not a supernatural ability but neuroscience in action. It is the result of a complex network of billions of neurons, hormones, and bodily signals. When the environment is stable enough, that network becomes an accurate predictive tool. When the environment is chaotic, it turns into delusion. And here, the role of discipline becomes vital. A trader might feel a tightening in the gut, a racing heart. But he is not allowed to rely entirely on that feeling. He must verify it with data, with trading history, with concrete numbers. Intuition is only valuable when it is placed within the constraints of reason. I have witnessed friends who blindly trusted their gut feelings and were ultimately crushed by the market. They mistook the trembling in their bodies for accurate predictions. But I also saw others, those who consistently measured, who knew exactly when their intuition aligned with the data, and it was they who endured. Science has shown something similar in medicine. Good doctors don't just rely on feeling, but combine it with tests and imaging. Intuition opens the way, data confirms. In finance, too, intuition reveals opportunities, but only discipline turns it into sustainable profit. For me, this lesson resonates strongly. The body always whispers, but we must learn to listen selectively. Not every signal is right, not every feeling is trustworthy. But when we know how to combine them with reason, we gain a tool that no algorithm can easily replace. For many years on the trading floor, I gradually realized one thing: intuition is the wisdom of the body, but it is not absolute truth. It needs to be honed, verified, and constrained. Otherwise, it will betray us. Recall the card game experiment I once mentioned. Participants didn't know the rules, but their bodies started sweating when their hands touched the disadvantageous deck. After just a few tries, the body knew before the conscious mind knew. This is the clearest evidence of intuition's power, but also at the same time its fragility. Without clear feedback, the body can make mistakes, trigger false alarms, and we act erroneously. For traders, the crucial difference lies in whether they know how to impose discipline on their intuition. Successful people never rely on raw gut feelings. They measure it through results, verify it with data, and only retain intuitions that prove their worth over time. They are like a doctor, who both relies on clinical feeling and cross-references it with lab tests. This leads me to the conclusion that intuition does not negate reason but complements it. The brain has two pathways, fast and slow, and both need each other. The fast path helps us react instantly. The slow path helps us check and adjust. Ignoring one of the two is cutting off half our strength. When we look broader, this is not just true in finance. In sports, politics, military, wherever there is risk and immediate decision-making, intuition is always present. A tennis player predicts the ball's trajectory in a flash. A leader reacts to a crisis. A firefighter escapes a collapsing building due to an unsettling feeling. All rely on the same mechanism, the body and brain collaborating in a biological symphony. I used to think finance was just a game of numbers and analysis, but the more I lived in it, the more I saw it was actually a biological laboratory. There, hormones and bodily signals intertwine with data and charts, creating decisions shaped by human nature. Understanding this not only helps us trade better, but also helps us understand ourselves. Because ultimately, intuition is a mirror reflecting the relationship between body and mind. It reminds us that we are not cold, calculating machines, but flesh and blood creatures, carrying the evolutionary history of millions of years. When we enter the market, we don't leave our bodies outside the door. We bring them along, and they participate in every decision, every frown, every contraction in the gut. So what should we do with intuition? Neither reject nor worship it. We must train it, place it within a framework so it becomes a loyal ally instead of a betrayer. That is the only way to survive in high-risk environments where every decision can determine a career or a life. As I conclude this section, I want to emphasize that intuition is real. It has a clear biological basis, but it needs to be disciplined. If nurtured in the right environment with rules, feedback, and training, it becomes an invaluable asset. If not, it is merely the chaotic echo of the body, easily leading us astray. That is the message I have drawn after years of living amidst numbers and hormones between reason and body. To understand the market, one must first understand how we think with our blood, our heart, our breath, our gut, and even the most silent signals within our own bodies. Part 3. The Seasons of the Market ***. During my years on Wall Street, I began to see the market through a different lens. No longer did I perceive it as a random sequence of events. I realized it operated in recurring rhythms like seasons in nature. A season of hunting, a season of euphoria, a season of exhaustion. All recur, leaving their imprint not just on price charts, but also within the bodies of those involved. When entering the hunting state, traders become literal hunters. On the trading floor, they are no different from wolves stalking prey in the shadows, eyes wide, every sense directed toward the faintest signal. They don't just read numbers, they listen for every subtle shift in sound, observe every movement of their colleagues. Every change can herald an opportunity or a danger. The focal point of this state lies in a small structure in the brainstem, the locus coeruleus. There, a few tens of thousands of blue-stained neurons act as watchtowers. The locus coeruleus scans the continuous stream of sensory input, searching for the slightest change. Upon detection, it broadcasts a message throughout the body. Alert! Thanks to this, traders enter a state of heightened awareness, where light is brighter, sound is clearer, and every heartbeat pounds like a war drum. In such moments, they feel the market slow down, much like a tennis player sees the ball more clearly when in peak form. Traders can sense a faint price fluctuation that others miss. This heightened vigilance is not magic. It's the result of the locus coeruleus's trade-off, sacrificing the precision of detailed analysis for increased reaction speed. Physiological changes spread throughout the body. Adrenaline surges, dilating pupils, increasing heart rate, pumping energy into the blood. Dopamine floods the brain, transforming the hunting state into a source of excitement. Testosterone, even at moderate levels, subtly increases, boosting confidence in one's actions. All merge, creating a feeling that anyone who has experienced it will never forget: the exhilaration of a hunter finding a trail. What's fascinating is that even when sitting in front of a computer screen, not in a jungle, the trader's body reacts identically to how our ancestors did when tracking prey. Fingers grip the mouse, biceps tense slightly, breathing quickens every reflex poised for the pounce. The only difference is that the prey is now a trading opportunity. Once I sat next to a colleague when the bond market unexpectedly trembled. He hadn't even had time to analyze the news but had already typed an order, his eyes shining with an indescribable look. Afterward, while everyone else was still scrambling for reasons, his trade had yielded a substantial profit. He couldn't explain why, only saying, "I felt the market shift." This was the product of his locus coeruleus and the flood of hormones that had prepared him. What's notable is that this state doesn't last. The locus coeruleus cannot maintain high vigilance indefinitely, otherwise the body would be exhausted. It operates in cycles, like waves, rising and falling. Therefore, the market can be likened to a field where seasons of hunting occur, then yield to other seasons. I believe this is the starting point for the entire biological rhythm of the market. Before euphoria and exhaustion, there must be hunting the moment when participants strain their eyes for signals, drawn by tiny but suggestive changes that hint at a large opportunity. The hunt never stops at mere observation. It quickly transforms into a full-body experience where body and mind merge in a surge of excitement. Adrenaline pumps through the veins, quickening the heart rate. Dopamine floods the brain, turning every market signal into a potential reward, making traders feel like they're entering a game so captivating it's hard to pull away. Testosterone and cortisol act as catalysts, nourishing the feeling of confidence that they can seize the moment, can master risk. This combination creates a special heightened sensation. It makes the pursuit of opportunity not just a job, but a source of stimulation, almost like an addiction. Those on the trading floor no longer just feel like they are typing or clicking a mouse. They feel like they are participating in a life-or-death race, and indeed, their nervous systems react exactly that way. Many neurological studies show that dopamine is most strongly released not when we receive a reward, but when we are anticipating a reward. It is this expectation that makes the hunting process more captivating than even achieving the result. For traders, this means the preparation, monitoring, and betting phases can be even more addictive than winning. The market, therefore, is not only captivating because of money, but because of the chemical game within the brain and body. I once witnessed a colleague almost trembling as he sensed the market was about to fluctuate. His hands typed so fast on the keyboard that he couldn't control them, his eyes gleaming. After placing the order, he sat in silence, panting as if he had just run a sprint. In that moment, he was clearly no longer simply a trader. He was living in a world of dopamine and adrenaline, where his body transformed every market signal into a survival signal. What's interesting is that this feeling is identical to a hunt in nature. Primitive hunters felt excited upon seeing animal tracks, upon hearing strange sounds in the forest. Their bodies reacted even before the prey appeared. On the trading floor, the scenario repeats. A number jumps on the screen, a piece of news flashes by, and the entire body instantly surges with preparation. The market, in the end, is just another landscape for the hunting instinct deeply embedded in evolution. But this euphoria also carries danger. As adrenaline and dopamine surge, judgment can become skewed. The hunter easily rushes into a chase without carefully calculating the consequences. Traders are the same, easily placing bets too large, too quickly, believing they have sniffed out a sure opportunity. Their bodies make them trust that feeling, but the market promises nothing. And then, when the opportunity is seized, when the hand presses the Confirm Order button, the euphoria peaks in a fleeting moment. They feel a pure exhilaration, like an arrow just released from the bow, flying straight to its target. But immediately afterward, the market moves, real risk begins, the hunt ends, and a new season opens, the season of euphoria. This state is the bridge to the next phase in the market's rhythm. From seeking opportunity, the body shifts to a different mode. When consecutive wins appear, testosterone no longer merely supports but becomes the fuel of euphoria. From here, confidence inflates, risk escalates, and tragic scenarios gradually form. Euphoria begins with small victories, one successful trade, then another, and the body subtly changes. Testosterone gradually increases, not just in the moment of victory but sustained for longer, building a sense of confidence. Initially, it helps traders be courageous, react faster, ready to seize opportunities. But as the winning streak lengthens, testosterone becomes the fuel of euphoria, an endogenous stimulant that makes them feel invincible. I witnessed this transformation on colleagues' faces. After several weeks of continuous wins, they walked differently, their voices firmer, their eyes arrogant. They no longer doubted themselves, nor even the market. Every signal, however vague, was interpreted as evidence supporting their strategy. This inflated confidence permeated every gesture, every decision. Science has proven that testosterone not only changes mood, but also affects risk perception. Numbers show that when testosterone levels rise, people are willing to make larger bets, choose riskier strategies. On the trading floor, this means traders continuously increase their order sizes, believing they will keep winning. This escalation creates a state Alan Greenspan once called irrational exuberance. This feeling of invincibility isn't exclusive to finance. In politics, leaders also undergo a similar process. David Owen once called it the hubris syndrome, when power and successive victories make people arrogant, believing they cannot be wrong. The parallel with traders is clear. Repeated success transforms into delusion, and this delusion leads them into dangerous gambles. I remember a friend who, after several big months, began to speak of himself in overly confident terms. He believed he had found an unbeatable formula, and all warnings were ignored. At that point, I no longer saw a cautious trader but someone caught in a hormonal spiral. Testosterone had transformed belief into arrogance, and arrogance always invites punishment. The danger lies in the body reinforcing the delusion. When testosterone surges, every sensation in the body supports the belief that you are right. Muscles are taut, the brain is flooded with dopamine, the heart beats strongly but steadily. You don't just think you're right, you feel you're right, and this feeling is so powerful that reason struggles to resist. It is in this phase that the market easily ignites bubbles, because not just individuals but the entire collective of traders experiences euphoria simultaneously. Each person is swept along by their own winning streak. Each person pushes one more reckless step, and the entire crowd forms a common belief that the market will only go up. Bubbles, therefore, are not just economic phenomena, but the product of a collective hormonal storm. But like all biological cycles, euphoria cannot last indefinitely. Testosterone has its limits, and when the market reverses, it is no longer an ally. Instead, another hormone rises, cortisol. And from here, the season of euphoria gives way to another season, the season of stress. The euphoria hasn't even faded before another wave hits. The market doesn't allow anyone to win forever, and when a streak of favorable trades breaks, the body's rhythm changes too. Now, testosterone recedes, giving way to cortisol, the hormone inextricably linked to stress and fear. It doesn't appear in fleeting moments like adrenaline. It lingers, gradually becoming a persistent flow throughout the body. When a trader begins to incur losses, cortisol levels surge, altering every sense. Instead of brighter light and sharper sounds, as in the hunt, the world now seems hazy. Memory is poor, concentration wanes, reactions slow, and the mind is haunted by potential risks. On the trading floor, I saw friends cross that line. Just weeks before, they were confidently making bold bets. Now, after a string of losses, they sat glued to their screens, avoiding trades, or if forced to act, doing so with extreme caution, eyes tense, breath short, sometimes hands trembling. Cortisol had changed how they saw the market. From seeing opportunities, now they saw only dangers. The body at this point doesn't just experience emotion. Cortisol affects many other systems. It increases blood sugar to prepare the body for danger. It diverts blood from the stomach to muscles, leaving the stomach neglected, causing nausea or abdominal pain. It suppresses the immune system, making the body prone to illness. In this state, traders lose not only money but also their health. When cortisol persists long-term, the consequences are even more severe. High blood pressure, abdominal fat accumulation, stomach ulcers, memory impairment, depression. All are sequelae of chronic stress. I have seen many leave Wall Street not because they ran out of money, but because their bodies could no longer endure. They walked away with empty eyes, gray skin, like exhausted warriors after an endless battle. The shift from testosterone to cortisol forms a dangerous spiral. When the market rises, the body pushes us to be more reckless. When the market falls, the body pushes us to extreme avoidance. The result is that human behavior often exceeds rational levels, making market cycles even more intense. Individual biology becomes the engine of collective volatility. I remember a winter day when the bond market plummeted. The normally noisy room fell eerily silent. No one dared to speak loudly, as if every word could invite further calamity. There, cortisol didn't just flow in the veins of individuals, but seemed to permeate the entire atmosphere. The entire trading floor was plunged into a season of stress, where everyone recoiled, trembling at every fluctuation. For me, that moment showed that the market doesn't just reflect economics, but also the human biological cycle. From the vigilant excitement of the hunting season to the arrogance of the euphoria season, then the paralyzing fear of the stress season, it all repeats again and again, without any invisible hand. Just the hormones in our bodies are enough. Cortisol, when it first appears, can be beneficial. It awakens the body, preparing it for danger. But when it persists for too long, its effects become destructive. Prolonged cortisol causes the body to live in a constant state of alarm. Heart beats faster than necessary, blood pressure rises, fat accumulates around the abdomen, stomach becomes prone to ulcers, the immune system weakens. Many who leave the trading floor carry these illnesses as if they had just endured a war of attrition. On the floor, I saw a clear change in those caught in the stress cycle. They were no longer flexible, quick-witted individuals, but shadows sitting listlessly before screens, avoiding decisions. Cortisol makes the brain lean towards extreme risk avoidance. They miss opportunities because they see only dangers. Sometimes this avoidance is even worse than the previous recklessness, because it immobilizes them exactly when action is needed. The contrast with the previous phase is cruel. Those who were once proud of their victories fueled by testosterone and confidence, now become trembling figures in the grip of cortisol. These two states are not just opposite but intimately linked. They are two sides of a biological cycle, a pendulum swinging between euphoria and stress. The market, in this sense, is no different from a living body with a hunting season, a euphoria season, and then an exhaustion season. But the tragedy doesn't stop at individuals. When many people experience this cycle together, the entire market trembles. Collective euphoria can inflate bubbles, pushing values far too high, and when cortisol spreads, collective fear makes the market crash faster than any model predicts. Thus, bubbles and crises are not just economic phenomena, but biological consequences of an entire community. This is what both haunted and fascinated me. The financial market, seemingly governed by formulas and data, is actually dominated by hormones and bodily reactions. It is an amplified stage of what happens within each human being: excitement, arrogance, fear, exhaustion. With that realization, I looked back at my entire journey. I clearly saw that the seasons of the market were not mysterious. They were echoes of the seasons within our own bodies. The hunting season, ignited by adrenaline and dopamine. The euphoria season, fueled by testosterone, transforming people into invincible beings. And the stress season, led by cortisol, pulling them into the abyss. All these seasons endlessly revolve and repeat, leaving their imprint on every individual and on the entire economy. Therefore, to understand the market, one cannot just read numbers. We must also listen to the whispers of hormones, of beating hearts, of breaths, of churning stomachs. For there, the seasons of the market are formed, grow, and fade. Part 4. Resilience. There's a truth rarely acknowledged. The human body isn't always a helpless victim of stress. Throughout evolution, we've developed a remarkable ability not just to endure but to adapt to stress. This is what I call toughness. It's not merely a type of strength to absorb blows, but the ability to transform stress into a driving force for growth. If you observe, you'll see two types of reactions to adversity. Some are swept away after just a few shocks, collapsing when the market turns against them. Others, facing the same challenges, grow stronger, learning to adapt and resist better next time. The difference lies not in intellect or morality, but in the biology of neurohormonal responses. Stress isn't always bad. In some circumstances, it's like a stimulant. Adrenaline makes us alert. Cortisol, in moderate doses, boosts attention and learning. It's thanks to stress that humans achieve extraordinary feats, running faster, reacting more accurately, becoming surprisingly creative. But the question is, how do we prevent stress from becoming a prolonged burden that wears down the body? Here, toughness emerges as a central concept. It's the ability to recalibrate the nervous and endocrine systems to cope with stress without being devastated. Biologically, a tough person is someone with a strong stress response, but also quick recovery. Hormones surge at the right time but then quickly subside, leaving no harmful residual cortisol. In contrast, those lacking toughness often fall into a prolonged state of stress. Cortisol accumulates, the immune system is suppressed, the body collapses. In finance, this means they are easily crushed after a losing streak, never regaining confidence. I observed this difference firsthand on the trading floor. Some, when the market crashed, turned pale, trembled, and curled up, unable to act. But others, though feeling the pain, picked themselves up after a few days, analyzed, and sought new opportunities. Not because they were emotionless, but because their bodies had a better ability to regulate stress. This hints at a truth: toughness can be trained. Our bodies have a learning mechanism, not just in the brain but also in the hormonal system. Just as muscles grow after each workout, the nervous system can learn how to confront stress. Thus, the next time we face it, we no longer overreact but know how to control it, using it as a source of energy. Toughness, therefore, is not just a psychological quality. It is a biological capacity where body and mind collaborate to create endurance. Understanding this, we clearly see that the resilience of traders, athletes, or anyone in harsh environments is not a mystery. It is a skill that can be built and honed, like training the body for a marathon. To understand why some people can stand firm amid stress while others collapse, we must look at how the body trains itself. Physical training not only changes muscles, but also restructures the nervous and endocrine systems. Each time of high-intensity exercise, the body undergoes a form of controlled stress. Heart beats fast, lungs strain, hormones flood the blood. But it is precisely in this process that the body learns to regulate, surging strongly then quickly subsiding, preventing stress from becoming a prolonged condition. Those who exercise regularly have a more flexible hormonal system. Cortisol spikes when needed but also decreases rapidly, leaving a state of balance. In contrast, inactive individuals, when shocked, experience high cortisol that decreases slowly, prolonging the damage. This difference can determine who recovers after a market loss and who gets engulfed in stress. Toughness, therefore, is not innate. It is the result of systematic training, running, weightlifting, playing sports. All are laboratories where the body practices confronting stress. After each period of pressure, the nervous system rebalances and reactions become more precise next time. Thus, someone accustomed to training will not be easily knocked down by the market. In reality, I met traders who maintained strict exercise discipline. They stepped onto the trading floor with a distinctly different demeanor, alert, resilient, less swayed by short-term fluctuations. When they incurred losses, they also recovered faster. Not because they were colder, but because their bodies knew how to handle stress. The hormones in their blood did not betray but supported them. This shows that toughness is not simply enduring. It is transforming stress into adaptation. The body is like a musical instrument. If untrained, it easily falls out of tune when challenged. But if regularly practiced, it can play complex pieces of stress without missing a beat. Conversely, those who don't train easily fall into a negative spiral. When facing stress, cortisol surges, leading to a cascade of effects: insomnia, rapid heartbeat, poor memory. They overreact to risk, avoid opportunities, or panic and rush into wrong decisions. The difference between them and resilient individuals lies not in intelligence, but in the biological endurance the body has accumulated. Toughness, viewed from this perspective, is not just a personal matter. It is also a reminder that every system, from the trading room to the economy, needs individuals whose bodies have been trained to endure. When a collective consists of many resilient individuals, the entire system also becomes more stable. From this observation, I realized that physical training is not a luxury for traders. It is a biological tool that helps them survive. The market can be cruel, but the human body, if trained, can learn how to face it. Toughness doesn't stop at short-term benefits. It also shapes a long-term career. Those who know how to train their bodies and minds to adapt to stress can maintain stable performance for many years, while others easily fall into cycles of exhaustion, exhilaration, and collapse. A body accustomed to stress training has a valuable characteristic. It learns to activate and deactivate quickly. This means that when needed, adrenaline and cortisol are powerfully released, aiding immediate reactions. But immediately afterward, they subside quickly, not prolonging the damage. This is the key difference between toughness and mere endurance. Someone who merely endures often lives in prolonged stress, letting cortisol gnaw at their body daily. Someone with toughness actively lives with stress, using it as medicine, then letting it go when no longer needed. In the financial profession, this difference creates very different people. One group of traders, after a period of losses, might leave the profession or continue working in a state of fatigue and resentment. The other group, though also incurring losses, knows how to recover quickly, find their rhythm, and move forward. These individuals are not immune to stress, but they transform it into a force for regeneration. To reach that state, physical training is indispensable, but toughness is even broader. It includes a mindset that confronts adversity, seeing difficulties as challenges to learn from instead of threats. A person with such a mindset will not sink into helplessness, but will view stress as an opportunity to expand their body's and brain's tolerance threshold. When this process is repeated, the body gradually reprograms itself not to collapse under volatility. Toughness, therefore, is not the ability to stand still in a storm, but the ability to transform the storm into a favorable wind. It is thanks to this that some people in financial markets can survive through many cycles of bubbles and crises, while others disappear after a major loss. From here, the question arises: if individuals are strongly influenced by hormones and stress, What happens when the entire market collection of millions of individuals oscillates according to that biological rhythm? How do impacts cascade from molecules to the market, and how can not only individuals but also the entire system develop resilience? This question leads us to the next step. I want to broaden the perspective, moving away from the body of a single trader to look at the entire market as a giant organism. Because what happens in the blood, in the hormones of one person, doesn't stop at the individual level. It resonates, amplifies, and ultimately writes global fluctuations. When I observed the market during its most dynamic phases, a clear image emerged. It was like a colossal body where each trader was just a cell. And just like the human body, the entire financial system operates according to biological rhythms. From hormonal molecules to global crisis waves, there is a seamless, hidden current connecting them. Let's start with testosterone. At the individual level, it makes traders more confident, accepting greater risks. But when thousands of people simultaneously experience winning streaks, testosterone levels in the entire collective rise, resulting in a storm of collective confidence that inflates financial bubbles. The market escalates not just due to profit expectations, but because hormones have amplified belief to irrational levels. Then, when the winning streak ends, cortisol begins to spread. Each individual feels anxious, overly cautious. But when a multitude of traders are simultaneously dominated by cortisol, the market shifts from euphoria to panic. Extreme risk avoidance becomes a collective phenomenon, dragging asset prices down faster than any mathematical model could predict. What's noteworthy is that reactions that are inherently individual biological responses resonate into systemic volatility. A reckless trader might only lose his own money. But when thousands of people are reckless due to testosterone, the entire market booms into a bubble. Someone fearful due to cortisol might only sit out a trade. But when thousands of people avoid risk, the entire system freezes. This is why I argue that the market cannot be understood solely by abstract mathematical tools or economic models. We must view it as a collection of living bodies, carrying hormones, emotions, and evolutionary memories. The market, in the end, is biology on a grand scale. During my years in the trading room, I witnessed this chain reaction clearly. When everyone was winning, the atmosphere buzzed, laughter echoed, and orders became increasingly daring. When failure struck, the atmosphere became heavy, typing slowed. Everyone avoided trades. An atmosphere of cortisol enveloped the room and then spread throughout Wall Street. From one perspective, we could say that the market breathes in sync with the hormones of its participants. This is a paradoxical truth. Tiny molecules like dopamine can write monumental events. The dot-com bubble, financial crises, bank collapses. From molecules to market, that connection is obvious but often overlooked. This leads to a crucial consequence. If we want to create a safer financial system, we cannot merely amend risk calculation formulas or add technical regulations. We must account for biological and psychological factors. Because humans don't make decisions like computers. They make decisions with their bodies. And the body has limits, rhythms, and illusions that we must recognize. Once the connection from molecules to market is clear, the unavoidable question is, how can both individuals and the system become more resilient? Because if hormones can push traders and the market into extreme spirals, our task is not just to describe that spiral, but to find ways to minimize harm. First, at the individual level, toughness can be trained. We've seen that physical exercise, discipline in life, and self-awareness of bodily signals help people control stress better. A trader who listens to his heart rate, breath, and the tightening sensation in his gut will quickly recognize when cortisol is taking over. Thanks to this, they can intervene, rest, exercise, or reduce their risk exposure, rather than letting hormones lead them to the bitter end. But resilience cannot stop at the individual. It must extend to the entire financial market system. If designed and managed while ignoring biological factors, it will always be vulnerable. Quantitative tools, risk models that assume humans behave like computers are flawed. In reality, humans behave as creatures dominated by hormones. And when managing the market, we must account for this truth. We can envision systemic resilience as a body's ability to withstand disease. A healthy body relies not just on the strength of individual cells, but also on its overall structure, immune system, ability to distribute burdens, and flexibility to recover after shocks. The market is the same. It needs mechanisms to reduce collective stress, measures to prevent collective hormones from erupting into bubbles or crises. This suggests a vision. Instead of solely focusing on short-term profits, the financial system must learn to build long-term resilience. This resilience does not mean eliminating risk that is impossible. It means learning to accept risk but not being crushed by it, just as the body has evolved to confront stress without collapsing. As I look back on my journey, from my early days on the trading floor to my research in the laboratory, I see a clear thread running through it all. Finance is a biological field disguised under a veneer of data. To understand the market, we need not just mathematics and theory, but an understanding of heartbeats, hormones, and evolutionary reflexes. Because ultimately, the numbers on the screen do not move themselves. They reflect decisions born from flesh and blood, from hormones, from instinct. If we acknowledge and integrate biological factors into financial management, we can create a system that is not only smarter, but also more humane, a system that understands humans are not machines and therefore need measures to help them be resilient, so that every hormonal cycle does not turn into a global tragedy. That is the ultimate meaning of resilience. The ability to stand firm not by avoiding stress, but by learning to live with it, adapt, and recover, from every molecule in the blood to the entire global market. This is the lesson we must engrave upon ourselves if we are not to repeat old mistakes.